Anyway, um, so that was that. So yeah, I just wanted to make that point. If anybody recognizes me a tiny bit from back in the day, I used to have a kind of a smaller beard and mustache. It was still a full beard, but it was in the 90s, so it was way trimmed and mustache and all that, and very long hair, which it was always held back, so it didn't much look different than it does now, except that there's nothing in the back. There was always a ponytail, and then I even always had my hair, like I guess I've always been vain apparently, but I even had my hair like glued down so that there was no stray hairs and all that kind of stuff. I had this. It was because of a boss that I worked for that had hair like that, and he always looked cool. I thought he looked like, very, very GQ, whatever. And but then after I started growing my hair out like that, I saw Steven Seagal, and I'm like, oh yeah. Of course, I was way beefier than Steven Seagal at the time, so I would have had to consider if I was going for that. I would have had to go with the fat Steven Seagal look or whatever. It's funny. I guess a lot of people didn't see me as fat. I was very athletic, but I had seriously a good, I don't know, 70, 80 pounds on me that I didn't need, or 70 maybe. I had a chest and stuff like this, so I guess I had a lot of weight on me that was muscle. That's kind of gone now. Big shoulders, all that stuff. But I was a tubblard. Besides, but like I say, I was very athletic. I had tree trunk legs and stuff like that, so it was bad enough to where and a lot of guys, big guys that are in the gym a lot and stuff, understand why I couldn't find jeans. There weren't as many styles of jeans as there are now, and there were no stretchy jeans that I knew of. I couldn't find jeans. If they fit me in my thighs, they did not fit my waist. Period. And that was highly annoying. I mean, they would either have to be too big in the waist to just barely fit skin tight on my thighs. And there was basically one style, either 501s and these are essentially the same, either 501s or like boot cut or whatever, but there was no carpenter pants or whatever like that I ever could find, and so I didn't even know they existed. And so yeah, back in the day when I had lots of muscle, I was such an idiot. I spent like 5 hours a day in the gym, like 5 days a week. What a moron. I used to spend 400 or 500 bucks every month on supplements, protein powders, branched chain amino acids, and all that junk, just to be packing on the muscle. And so somebody was telling me, my point of this was, this had to be about 10 years ago. I ran into somebody in Oregon that knew me from back in the day, or that recognized me from back in the day from working in the club all the time. And they said, oh, you were so and so's husband? I thought you were a Samoan. I thought that guy was a Samoan. And I'm like thinking, I had pretty straight hair. I mean, it was certainly straight when it was in a ponytail. And it didn't go that long out of the ponytail, but it was ultra straight on top because I slicked it down. If there was any strays, man, they either went or they were um, gelled down. And so it was funny that I'm like, my skin is very Caucasian. You can see it now. But he was just convinced that I couldn't have been the same guy. He thought I was a Samoan. And I'm like, he saw the size of my neck, I guess. I had like a 19-inch neck. And I'm like thinking I was just a giant fat ass. And I guess that's why he thought I was Samoan. Not to mention, I guess the club was dark. But I guess as in another life I was Samoan. Now, we actually had some Samoan guys in the club that were terrifying. I mean, it was the University of Oregon town, so we had these couple of guys in the early '90s, mid even well to late '90s. Actually, so it's late '90s that played for U of O, and that were freaking huge. I mean, they were like bison that would walk on 2 feet. Their necks were the exact same size as the dimensions of their head. Like you couldn't. Their ears could have been anywhere, and it wouldn't have looked weird. They didn't have a jawline or whatever, that kind of thing. And the smallest of them was probably 2 or 3 inches taller than me, but shoulders as wide as I am tall, probably. I don't know. His two brothers were way bigger than him. His next oldest brother, who played there also at the same time, the top of my head was at the start of his shoulders, and the other brother after that was even taller than him by 4 or so inches. They were monsters. But it's always shocked me that they couldn't fight to a lick. You know, they were probably great on the field, lots of energy, lots of pushing power, and all that kind of stuff, grabbing, wrestling somebody down. But boy, they couldn't take a punch. Like it was like my second day there, and there was a freaking riot. It was a big club. I mean, the club I think was only supposed to hold like 300-400 people, except on weekend days like Friday, Saturday. They would do head counts on a pretty regular basis to see what was there. And I originally thought it was fire marshal stuff, but no, it couldn't have been. Otherwise, people would have been freaking out. There was always like 3,000 people there in a place that was supposed to only have 300 or 400 people. But it was like going to Mardi Gras down on, on Bourbon Street or something like that. There was no room to sit down. There was only, only crowd surfing room. You could like, if you wanted to go one way, you'd get into that little artery of people that would push you that way. If you wanted to go the other way, you get in the other little artery of people that would push you the other way. I always thought that was hilarious, but the owners of that place probably made all of their money in 3 days a week, and the rest of the time it was just for show, just for fun. But yeah, my second night there, there was a riot. We had like 8 bouncers, me and another guy, the guy that hired me, were the most experienced by far. And most everybody else there was anywhere from like their first year to maybe 2 or 3 years or something. And the guy that hired me, Mike, had been doing it for, at least 10 years, I would think, before that. And I'd been doing it for 6 or so. And it was easy. It was easy as, if you had the energy and all that kind of stuff. Hey, stop it. Stop it. Yep. Ginger Billy, don't try to kill stuff. And not, not have the desire to beat the hell out of people all the time, which in the club, I think I had a better head on my shoulders that way than some of the other guys, because some of them just like to smack people, and they got plenty of excuses to do it on a pretty regular basis. And I was the opposite. I was like always trying to put the brakes on stuff like that and deal with problems before they ever occurred, and make sure that certain people didn't get overserved because they would be like pissing off a giant kind of thing and that kind of stuff. But I got that second night, we were, Mike and I, we were just about the 2 biggest people there. There was one other guy that was pretty good sized, but he was quite a bit younger than us and lots less experienced. But anyway, we were pushing these 2 Samoan guys toward the door because there had been an incident. And when I say they were big, it's not a joke. Mike's nickname was Big Mike, but the guy he was pushing was the brother who was taller than Mike. Mike was like only 6'3" compared to this other guy had to be 6'8" at least, I would guess. And I was pushing the guy that was closer to my size, but he was probably 250 pounds, 280 pounds, something like that. Solid muscle. They were both kind of scary. But the guy I was pushing was named, of all things, it was named Steely. And he was the one with the attitude. The other brother that Mike was pushing was pretty much just stepping in for his brother. Didn't have his own problem going on. Steely, he was a whole nother ball game. He had some caffeine issues or something. He needed to switch to Sanka. But I was just doing what Mike was doing, basically following orders. And I was pushing my guy kind of shoulder to shoulder with the other guy, so they went out at the same time. And we must have been about 10 feet from the door, and we had come quite a ways to push him that far. And this little fucking guy behind us, who we knew, his name was Jack Devereaux. Jack, if you ever see this, you're a dick. Jack is the nicest guy you could ever meet. And he was quite an athlete himself, a track star at the University of Oregon. But little, like 5'9", 5'8", something like that. And hilarious. Fucking a drunk. And he had a problem with Steely. I don't know what the fuck he was doing. I had no idea about this. And then all of a sudden, I just felt something touch me on the shoulder. Jack jumped up with one hand on Mike's shoulder, one hand on my shoulder, and smacked Steely on the top of the head from behind us. and was then gone. Like he jumped up like a jack-in-the-box, pop, and then vanished. And Steely turned around, and I could swear my life started passing before my eyes. I was like, oh shit. Luckily, though, I was like standing next behind Mike. Mike was a gigantic human being. Even though he was only 6'3", he was one of those people that would bend up and pick up a car, with his other hand, kind of a thing, with his hand that was closest to the car. He did that once before. That's why I know he could do that. And Mike said, push! And so all of a sudden, I just got some gas in me, and we pushed. And I just kept pushing. And then all of a sudden, I heard click. And I noticed that was the door. The big double doors that were like 2 inches thick that were behind me. And I was on the outside with Steely and his brother. And it turns out I got out of the corner of my eye, and there are other brothers out there too. And the other brother's even bigger than both of them, which is not that big of a deal. Like I say, this wasn't my first rodeo. But so I'm out there by myself, no other security at all. Nothing. In fact, there weren't very many people out there. It was probably 12:30, 1 o'clock, something like that. And the door was solidly locked behind me. There was no handles. It was made that way. For once they closed, they closed. And I'm outside, and whoever it was, Mike or somebody, must have just forgot about me. Out of sight, out of mind. No problem, except then Steely spun around on me. And he was still reeling from Jack smacking him in the head. And he spun around and grabbed me by the shirt on both sides of my shoulder. And his eyes suddenly got as big around his saucers. And he's like, I'm going to kill somebody. He had this terrifying rage look in his face, except giant. And he just said, I'm going to kill somebody. And I was the only one there, and I'm like, I very quickly did that math, and I'm like, wait a minute, I'm the somebody out here that you don't know. And I was like, honestly, that was it. By that time, I had plenty of opportunities to get killed before then. And I thought that was the very next or perhaps last one. There was nothing on my mind, absolutely at all, except for Steely's eyes at that moment. And so it was panic / just adrenaline survival style. And I learned a long time ago how to hit, because I boxed when I was younger. And so I knew how to punch, but I didn't bother. I didn't revert to any training I've ever had, which is fucked up. No muscle memory, really. I put my right fist on his chin, and then my left fist on his chin like big hooks. Just big, fast, as much power as I owned hooks. And I know for sure I had a ton of adrenaline going on because I was terrified. And I'm just surprised I wasn't screaming at the time, like falling off a cliff kind of screaming. And I'm really glad I reacted quickly, but it was just in time. I saw when my left hand touched his chin, his eyes rolled up in the back of his head like a damn, gambling machine, one-armed jack or something. And it was like, it was gone. He was out, sleep. And that was good, because right off my right hand, whereas Mike was, he was pushing his brother. His brother started reaching for me, and he was within reach. And so I didn't even have to step toward him. I just turned slightly and did the exact same thing. I never thought about it at all, not one iota. It was all instinct. And these big right and left hand hook. That was it. Touch his chin both times and did the exact same thing, like deja vu. His eyes rolled up and went, and he was out. And at the time, I was just like, still in the back of my mind, still somebody else was flying this ship. But in the back of my mind, I was like, well, that's weird. That was easy. I thought I was going to be dead, and they're asleep, both of them, but then the brother, who was way scarier in a way, the Steely's attitude terrified me. But the brother was gigantic, He was way bigger than both of them. All three of them Samoans, hardcore Samoans. And I'm guessing the older brother must have played for the U of O too, but I just knew that the two brothers played for the U of O because I had seen them. But then the other brother was there, and he was the oldest, and so I instantly, after hitting the one brother and he's no longer a problem, I pivoted and I took a step, and I was going to take one more step, and then I was going to touch his chins the exact same way. I wasn't thinking at all, other than I had to deal with the you know, the death that was coming, so just pure survival. Until, which was really fucking, this is really really strange. I have the picture in my head still to this day, and it's been a long time ago. Was that he went from having this Bigfoot persona in my head, and he was, I'm 6 foot tall. He was at least 8 inches taller than me, at least. And his head was above my head. His chin was somewhere around the top of my head. And not just tall like a basketball player, but huge like a giant. And so this guy went from this in the corner of my eye to suddenly having an expression on his face like a 4-year-old getting beaten. I'm not joking you a bit. Try to picture that anytime you've ever seen a 3-4-year-old getting spanked or something, or really scared and about to bust out crying. That hasn't cried yet, but about to, that look on their face, that instant flash frame of that look on his face. That's what I saw. And he was bending down, while he was looking at me, but he was like blindly, like a raccoon or something, trying to pull at one of his brothers. And I instantly got this flash in my head of that he's afraid of me. He thinks like I'm going to kill him. And it like, I'm really glad that my inner self has this ability, or at least had this ability at that time. But it just it made me not take that next step. I had taken very fast. I pivoted, and I didn't even miss a beat. I pivoted and I took that step, and I was, arranging my hands. And then I saw that look on his face, and I was just like, holy fuck, this is surreal. And it, started breathing again. And within about, I don't know, time was weird at that moment, but it seemed like within about 30 seconds or something like that, the door opened and somebody came out, and then the doors were back open again. Maybe Mike had realized that I was outside still or something. I don't know. But to anybody's surprise at that moment, when they opened that door, Steely and his scary brother were both on the ground and trying to come to their senses. They didn't go out long. They were out long enough to hit the ground and not move for a minute, for a second, whatever. And basically, once I realized that was going on, I hesitantly stepped back, and there was no bravado, no nothing. I wasn't out there to impress anybody. I was just trying to live to the next day, kind of thing. And I turned around, and nobody ever said anything about it or anything like that. But that was my introduction to that club. Second day. And Steely, and I don't know Steely's brother to this day, or brother's name, or either one of them actually, for that matter. And I don't even know their last names. I could find out. But they played for the U of O in the